Okay, so are you ready to really dig into this whole agitisis thing?
It's not just a catchy term, it's a real workplace dynamic.
Yeah, we're going deep on this one. Pulling from Suram's Office Epidemics.
And let me tell you, some of these situations way too relatable.
Oh, I bet. So the excerpt throws us right in there with VJ.
VJ, yeah. Project manager, but not exactly the picture of calm leadership, you know?
Not at all, haha. The excerpt, it's Wednesday afternoon. Deadlines are like breathing down everyone's necks.
Ugh, the worst.
Papers flying, VJ's pounding his fist, the whole bit.
And everyone else is, what, trying to become one with their office chairs?
Basically, hiding under their desks, hoping he doesn't notice them.
Classic stress response, but instead of inward, it's exploding outward.
Outward explosion is a good way to put it.
And here's the thing, VJ probably thinks he's motivating the team with all that intensity.
Oh, totally. Thinks he's like this high-energy, get-it-done leader.
But what he's really doing, creating a straight-up fear-based environment.
It's not effective. The excerpt goes into how VJ just lays into Ravi, the junior analyst, right? Over some missing figures.
Oh no, poor Ravi. Talk about being thrown into the fire.
And Priya, remember Priya? Practically a ghost, too scared to even speak up.
It's almost comical when you think about it until you realize it's happening in workplaces every single day.
Every single day. So how do we know this is actually agitisis, clinically speaking, not just a case of VJ needs a vacation?
Right, because everyone has their moments. The excerpt gets into that. It's about patterns. They've got this whole symptom checklist.
Like a diagnosis.
Exactly. So it's not just one bad day. It's are these behaviors happening over and over again?
Okay, so let's hear it. What are some telltale signs of agitisis? What should people be listening for?
Well, there are the obvious ones, like how often are the outbursts happening, the yelling, the slamming things down.
Oh, and those heavy sighs? You know the ones.
Oh, I do. Like the world is ending with every exhale.
And you forgot about the impossible deadlines.
Ah, yes. The constantly moving targets. You know, VJ probably loves that always-on feeling.
But for everyone else, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
So it's that constant pressure, that feeling of never being able to catch a break.
Which brings us to the impact on the team, because it doesn't start with VJ. Right?
It's like his agitisis is contagious.
Contagious is spot on. Look at Priya. She's described as this rock star employee, but now she's paralyzed.
Because she's terrified of setting him off.
Exactly. And then there's Ravi, new guy, eager to please.
Who probably thinks this is normal.
Oh, 100%. Thinking this is what it takes to succeed.
And then we have poor Ananya, the intern. The excerpt makes it seem like she's basically decided the best approach is to be invisible.
Smart intern. But see, this is what I mean about the domino effect. VJ's agitisis is turning his team from collaborators to survivors.
Yeah, everyone's so busy trying to avoid being the target of his next outburst.
Yeah.
That actual work, the stuff they're supposed to be doing, falls by the wayside.
And morale. Forget about it. And that's where the real damage starts, because this isn't just about one tense office anymore, right? The excerpt goes into how this stuff has serious consequences.
Oh yeah, this isn't just a VJ problem anymore. It becomes an everyone problem.
Exactly. And we'll dive into all that right after this quick break. So we're back. And, you know, where we left off at Agitisis, it's not pretty.
And it can have some serious ripple effects, not just within a team, but for an individual's career, too.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking potential career sabotage here.
Is it really that serious?
Think about it. Who wants to be known as the VJ of their department?
Right, the one everyone avoids.
Exactly. Word gets around, people start dodging projects, avoiding interactions.
So then it impacts their opportunities for growth, their reputation.
All of it. And on an organizational level, forget about it. It's like this silent productivity killer is on the loose.
Okay, so it sounds like agitisis is bad news for everyone involved.
Yeah.
But the excerpt does offer some hope.
Oh, absolutely. It's not all doom and gloom.
Phew. Because it was starting to feel a little heavy there for a second.
It's easy to get caught up in the negative, but the excerpt's message is ultimately a positive one.
Okay, good. So there's a way to deal with this.
Absolutely. There are ways to manage it, even overcome it.
So how do we even start? Because let's be real, sometimes it can be tough to recognize these patterns in ourselves.
You're telling me. That's why I like how the excerpt approaches it. They've got the severity diagnosis thing.
A diagnosis, so you can figure how bad it is.
Exactly. It's like, how much of a VJ problem do we really have here? It helps you gauge whether you're dealing with, you know, a few isolated incidents.
Or a full-blown agitisis epidemic.
Huh. Exactly. And the best part is it gives you tools to actually do something about it at each level.
Okay, so walk us through, how does this diagnosis thing work?
Well, you basically go through a series of statements and rate them on a scale.
Like, how often do you find yourself slamming your coffee mug down in frustration?
Something like that. But seriously, it's about recognizing those little tells.
The signs that maybe your inner VJ is trying to make an appearance.
Right. And depending on your score, you fall into one of three levels: perception, problem, or pain.
Okay, so perception being the mildest, and pain.
Pain is like full-blown intervention needed.
Gotcha. So what happens once you know where you fall on the Agitisis spectrum?
That's where the real magic happens, because the excerpt doesn't just leave you hanging with the diagnosis, it provides actual strategies for each level.
Okay, that's helpful. So it's not just a label. It's like, okay, now what?
Exactly. And it starts with awareness, just being able to name it, to say, hey, I'm experiencing some agitisis here, can be incredibly powerful.
Yeah, it's like calling it out for what it is.
Right. And then it's about taking those micro pauses, those moments where you feel the agitisis bubbling up, and choosing a different response.
So instead of firing off that angry email, you take a breath, maybe go for a walk, come back to it with fresh eyes.
Exactly. And the excerpt emphasizes communication, clear, concise, respectful communication, even when you're feeling stressed.
Because we all know how easy it is to let those emotions seep into our emails and messaging.
Oh, yeah, and then it just escalates from there.
Speaking of escalation, what about those more serious cases, the pain level agitisis? What can you do if you're dealing with that?
Well, that's where the excerpt introduces this column framework. And trust me, it's a game changer.
Column. Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this column framework.
It's about taking a step back from this situation, checking your own reactions, and responding with intention.
So it's about de-escalating instead of, meeting agitisis with more agitisis.
Exactly. It's about being that voice of reason, that calming presence, even when everything feels chaotic.
I like it. So it's like you're bringing the calm to the storm.
Exactly. And the excerpt breaks it down into these really practical steps, like asking questions instead of making accusations.
Which is so important because when you're feeling attacked, it's natural to want to get defensive.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
But the call framework encourages you to really listen, to try to understand the other person's perspective.
Even if you don't agree with it.
Even if you don't agree with it. And from that place of understanding, you can start to mediate the situation.
So it's about finding common ground, even in the midst of all that. Agitisis.
Exactly. It's not always easy, but the excerpt does a great job of providing those practical tools.
One of the things that really struck me about the excerpt is that it doesn't just focus on dealing with other people's agitisis.
Oh, yeah. It's not just about those people, right?
Right. It's about looking inward, too.
Because we've all got a little bit of VJ in us.
Oh, tell me about it. It's like the excerpt is holding up a mirror and saying, hey, you might be part of the problem, too.
And that can be a tough pill to swallow.
It can. But it's also incredibly empowering because once you recognize those tendencies in yourself, you can actually start to do something about it.
Absolutely. And that's where the real transformation begins.
So we've talked about how this impacts individuals, teams, but what about a whole company?
You're right. It's not hard to imagine how this could spread.
The excerpt focuses on Vijay and his team, but I'm thinking bigger picture now. Company-wide agitisis. What are the warning signs?
That's a really good point. It's not always as obvious when it's ingrained in the culture.
Right. It's like, how do you even begin to diagnose that?
Well, I think one of the biggest red flags is high turnover.
Makes sense. People jump ship when things are rough.
Exactly. When you've got people constantly leaving, it's worth asking why. Something's not right.
It's like everyone's trying to escape the burning building.
And then there's the communication breakdown. When people are too scared to speak up, to share ideas, it's a problem.
Because nobody wants to rock the boat, make waves.
And then everything just gets bottled up, festers, problems don't get solved, they just get worse.
Leading to more stress, more agitisis. It's a vicious cycle.
Exactly. And you start to see it in other ways, too. Productivity takes a nosedive, conflicts pop up left and right.
And then there's that feeling you get when you walk in that heaviness.
Oh, yeah, that feeling of dread. It's palpable.
So let's say you're listening to this and you're like, oh, no, this is my company.
Yeah.
What can you even do at that point?
Well, the good news is it's not a lost cause.
Because it does feel a little overwhelming. Like, how do you even begin to tackle that?
It starts with acknowledging that there's a problem, and that has to come from the top down.
Leadership sets the tone for everything.
100%. If leaders are modeling agitisis, guess what? the rest of the company is going to follow suit.
It's like a chain reaction.
Exactly. So it's about creating a culture where people feel safe, supported, empowered.
Where they can take risks, share ideas, without the fear of, VJ breathing down their necks.
Exactly. And that's not just good for employees, it's good for business too.
Because when people are happy, they work better.
It's true.
Yeah.
And they're more engaged, more productive, more likely to stick around.
So it's a win-win situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's about creating an environment where people can thrive.
Well said. So we've covered a lot of ground here, from individual agitisis to company-wide epidemics, and most importantly, how to deal with it.
And hopefully, our listeners are walking away with a better understanding of this dynamic and the tools to create positive change.
Now, here's a final thought for you to chew on the excerpt, focused on the workplace. But agitisis doesn't just exist in the office, right?
Oh, good point. It can pop up anywhere.
Exactly. So as you go about your week, pay attention to those moments of agitisis in your personal life, your relationships, and see if you can apply what we've learned today.
It's amazing how these things connect, right?
Totally. And who knows, you might just be able to stop an agitisis outbreak before it even starts.
Now, wouldn't that be something?
It would. That's all the time we have for today, but thank you for joining us for another deep dive. Stay curious, stay mindful, and most importantly, stay calm.
Couldn't have said it better myself.